welcome everybody to day two. Today we're going to be talking about something near and dear to my heart, which is the impact that computer science has on the world. Way too many nerds, I use the term endearingly, uh, consider computer science to be, um, and it is to a certain extent, a problem-solving endeavor. Like really, that's what we're doing when we're, working on computer science. We're like solving problems. But there's a problem with that, which is that we're so concerned about succeeding that we don't think about what happens if we do succeed. So if you build a self-driving car, that's an enormous technical challenge, right? Making a self-driving car that doesn't kill people, especially, is a enormous technical challenge. That it can so grasp you, like trying to solve a really difficult problem, that we never have that moment where we step back from it and say, what happens if we succeed? What is this going to do to society if we succeed? For example, when I was in grad school, we studied facial recognition. We were working on facial recognition. We weren't really studying it because, professional products weren't out yet, but we were working on it. And, the whole goal was to get the accuracy up as high as possible, to sit there and crank up that accuracy so it'd be more and more efficient and accurate at recognizing people's faces. And not once in that entire class did we ever say, could this be used for bad? Right? Everybody was talking about the good that can come of it, if we talked about it at all, which wasn't very, very much. But you walk up to a security system and the security opens the door for you, something like that. We never talked about could this be misused by a government, let's say. And now that we have facial recognition out in the wild, guess what? It is misused by governments and by corporations and by, anybody who wants to misuse it. So this is, if there's anything that is the thesis statement for this class, it's this. When you're out in the world working on a product, working on a new solution, just have a moment where you stop to think, what if we succeed? Just have that moment. I'm not even saying not to do it. I'm just saying, what if this is successful? And just think about it a little bit. That's all I'm asking from you guys from this entire semester. The only thing I really want from you is you to have that moment where you go, what if we succeed? And then if you've thought about it, then maybe you can help mitigate some of the problems that can come about from it. Because it's a huge mental weakness. It really is. One of my students graduated from UCLA, and he was given a job interview question at a company down in Irvine. And all five of the questions were, he sent me the questions. All five of the questions were basically variants of, how can you violate the privacy of Americans in order to better sell them sneakers? And none of the options were, you shouldn't do that. You know what I mean? Make them download TikTok. Exactly. Yeah. But none of the options were there weren't options as fill in the blank, but there was clearly no expectation that the person write back, maybe you shouldn't be doing this, right? Maybe you should not be violating people's privacy. And yeah, and so TikTok is a great example, Oscar. The head of TikTok, the CEO of TikTok, I watched a good chunk of the hearing. He was called in front of Congress, and he was made to answer questions about his company's, privacy and what they're doing with Americans' personally identifiable information. And it was really interesting to me because this is going to be a two quote argument, but basically what TikTok is doing is no different than what Facebook is doing, what Google is doing, what Reddit is doing, what Twitter is doing, what LG is doing, what Samsung is doing. All of the companies, all of the major tech companies are extremely invasive of your privacy and do not respect your privacy. When Google says they respect your privacy and we protect your information, what they're saying is we don't allow other companies to get your personally identifiable information. And the reason for that is so they don't lose their competitive advantage. It's not like Google isn't, doing everything it can to to learn everything it can about you, because it does. Um, they just don't want other companies getting a hold of Google's data. And so ByteDance is a Chinese company, which is why we are having these hearings. And so, TikTok's like, well, we don't move, Americans' private information off shores. We put it in Texas. I've also heard Singapore, which is offshore, but it's not China at least. And so Singapore, for those of you who don't know, it's near Malaysia, on the Malaysian peninsula. Um, and the CEO made a good case. He's like, look, half of all Americans use TikTok. Like, it's clearly popular. It's a product that Americans want, clearly. And what we're doing to Quoqua is no different from what Google is doing and Facebook's doing, and so on and so forth. And so sort of the sarcastic side of me is like, yeah, the only reason why these senators care about TikTok in particular is because it's owned by a Chinese company, right? I don't see them getting this worked up. I don't see them getting this excited about privacy when it comes to Google or your television, right? The smart TVs, like, how many people here have a smart television? Like, your television itself has Wi-Fi, it has YouTube on it, it has Netflix on it, it has Amazon Video on it, and you can actually directly stream Netflix via your television without needing to hook up a PlayStation or something like that to it. How many people here have a smart television? So I got everything on my TV. You name it, I got it. Yeah. Okay. So let me terrify you for a second. Actually, probably longer than a second. So everything that you do on your television gets reported back to the TV manufacturer, and that's just not even not even the things you run in the app. So, for example, if you have a DVD player, you put in a DVD and you play the DVD on your LG TV, the LG TV will watch what DVD, like the video coming out, and it'll ID the DVD that you have in the DVD player, and it phones home. It tells LG, hey, Christian is watching When Harry Met Sally right now, and it uses this to build a customer profile of you. And LG got caught, even if you said no in the settings. Like, even if you went through the settings and turned off all the things, like, don't listen to my microphone, don't content ID the things on my screen, don't report anything back to LG, don't use any personally identifiable information. Guess what? I'm going to do it anyway, said LG. And they did. And they would just send back all of the everything you're doing, every Netflix show you watch, every YouTube video you watch, every DVD you put in, every video game you play, every channel on your television that you watch, everything that you do gets shipped back to LG. And so they know all about your desire to watch the British baking show, or whatever it's called. So they can recommend better content. It's so they can advertise to you. And so the idea is, the more you know about a person, the more accurate the advertising is going to be when you advertise to them. And so the only way of stopping it is by, at the router level, at your Wi-Fi level, you can block the connections to LG, and it doesn't break anything. It just will frustrate the TV. Even if you don't turn on Wi-Fi to your local Wi-Fi connection, a lot of the TVs will actually search for open Wi-Fi connections in your area and upload the information on those instead. Personalized recommendation and ads and all that stuff. Yeah, but even if you say, no, don't do that, they did it anyway. And so, like I said, we don't seem to care, because LG is a South Korean company, right? And South Korea is a geopolitical ally of America, so, have at it, right? Samsung, also Korean, right? Samsung pissed me off, actually, when I was buying a new television in 2018. I bought a nice, not highest level, but like a pretty nice, like a $2,000 television from LG, from Samsung. and it didn't. I bought it specifically because it did not have advertising. If you go to ratings.com, you can actually, one of the fields they rate TVs on is if they have advertising. And so I basically filtered out all the TVs that did not have advertising on it. And I'm like, oh, this is a nice television that doesn't have advertising. In general, the only TVs that don't have advertising these days are like a really bottom tier products like Insignia or Roku, and even those have advertising in a lot of cases. Sony used to be a company that did not put any advertising on its TVs, and now it does advertising as well. And so I brought home this nice Samsung TV, hooked it up to my PlayStation, fired up Final Fantasy 11, which had HDR on it. It looked amazing. And then the TV started flashing, so I had to update the firmware on the TV because the firmware on the TV was kind of buggy. And then guess what? Advertising appeared. They actually patched advertising in on a product that I bought specifically because it did not have advertising. They patched in advertising, and what would happen is you're hitting, like, you bring up the input bar, where it has like YouTube and Netflix and PlayStation and Wii and things like that, and you're hitting right to go between the different input selections. It would actually insert an ad in the middle there, and so you're like trying to click on, like YouTube, and then it's like, whoop, nope, there's a new ad here, and you click on that instead, which is highly, highly sus. And stop watching TV, so no ads. Yeah, even if all you do is, no, it puts the advertising on the television itself, not inside of TV, not inside of YouTube, but actually when you're switching inputs between the different, your input selection, it would insert an ad there. And so it actually has advertising inside of the television itself. And so you have to get like a pie hole or something like that in order to block that kind of nonsense. And so I took the TV back. I actually went back to Best Buy. I'm like, get this crap out of here. I bought this because it didn't have advertising, and it's like selling things under false pretenses, right? Like it's false advertising. They sold it to me without ads, and then the second you get it, it has ads. And they're like, well, just don't update it. And I'm like, well, that's not a great idea because the firmware is not really working very well with the PlayStation, but I'll try it anyway. So I take a second one home, and I don't update it, and it updates itself. So I turn it off. I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning, ads are back, and it updated itself despite me having disabled updates and never running the update. It updated itself to put ads into the menu bar on it. So I took that one back too, and I was like, well, I hope you made $4,000 worth of advertising off other people, because I'm not going to be a party to this. So, yeah, it's and a lot of people these days, like a lot of younger people, just don't care about that kind of stuff. They're like, I just kind of like assume that everything I say is recorded. Everything I do on the internet is recorded. Everything, Google knows everything about me. What's the point of trying to, care about your privacy if, there's essentially no privacy? And does anyone here have that attitude? Like, I don't care. Like, I got nothing to hide, I don't care what they know about me. But my, my take on it is like, if a user selects don't spy on me, like, or don't update, that's really the thing that gets me, right? I'm like, don't, like, there's why is there even a setting if you're going to ignore it? You know what I mean? So what are they going to do with the information of ours? They're gonna advertise to you. Like, that's the main thing. And if, like, there's conspiracy theory people that postulate all sorts of wild scenarios, but it's pretty much just used to advertise to you. So but yeah, it's just like they give the illusion of giving privacy controls to the consumer, and then they just ignore them, which just that's the thing that really gets me. It's like, don't even pretend. Like, if you're gonna ignore these settings, just don't even pretend. Just tell just like, we're gonna invade your privacy. This is how it is. I went for years without agreeing to any of the end user license agreements, Like even now, if I hit like um, a certain button on my remote, like it brings up the EULA, the end user license agreement, because I've never agreed to it. And it's funny just how often it nags you. It's like, hey man, you need to agree to this thing to violate your privacy. And I'm like, nah, I'm all right. I'm gonna hit no. You know, it'll just pester you about it. So, what's the point of turning these things off? Exactly, exactly. It's to give you the illusion that you have some control over your privacy. Microsoft, Microsoft is especially bad once you get into the Windows 10 and Windows 11 world. Let's see if I can find it. The telemetry setting, diagnostic feedback settings. Yeah. Okay. So Microsoft has turned Windows into spyware as well. So it says you're sending required diagnostic data. So there's an option to send optional diagnostic data, but you can't actually turn off having Microsoft spy on you. Like it's arguable if you want to call it spying, but it's sending data on what your computer is doing back to Microsoft on a continual basis. For example, like every time you run a program, if you have just a default install of Windows 11, it reports every program you run to Microsoft. So I consider that to be intrusive. I don't want Microsoft knowing how much Path of Exile I'm playing. I don't, right? And so in order to turn off that, you actually have to use like some like, I don't want to say advanced hacker skills or something like that, but there's no, like by default, there's no option to turn this off. Like you can't, there's no single switch you can say where you're just like, hey, just don't report anything to Microsoft. It's fine. Like just don't. Just one click, don't stop. You know, and you can turn off optional data, but you can't turn off all data sent to Microsoft. And so you can see here I've got actually it disabled entirely, which come from the group settings and things like that, which the data they say they collect is always so vague. Yeah. But they say it's vague until you actually go to like the Microsoft privacy dashboard and see what they've collected on you. And you're like, oh dear, they have a record of every program I've run on my computer, and I've never given them permission for that. They just did it by default. Okay. So yeah, facial recognition is like a big deal. Here is a picture of a guy. Anyone want to know what he was fined 50 RMB for? RMB in China is has about the same purchasing power as a dollar, give or take. In US dollars terms, this is like seven-ish bucks. But it's like a $50 fine. Anyone want to guess what this person here was fined 50 RMB for? Yeah, and so if those things bug you, then there's tools you can download. There's Spywat Beacon, but mostly it just involves like going to like the like I don't want to say the registry editor, but like there's like group policy settings and things like that, where like the secret options can be turned off. Because if you're working for like I don't know the CIA probably wouldn't want Microsoft knowing every program that they're running on the CIA computers. There is ways of disabling it. They just make it really, really difficult to do so because Windows is essentially an advertising vehicle now. It's not an operating system. It's an advertising vehicle where it's trying to gather up information about you so they can advertise to you on the start menu. Yeah, so there's a lot of memes about the Chinese social credit system. The to what extent social credit has been implemented is a little bit more complicated than people make it sound. But yeah, this guy was fined 50 RMB for talking on a cell phone, but he's not talking on a cell phone. He's actually scratching his face. But they have cameras everywhere in China, and so they have facial recognition. They know who the person is. They also probably have a license plate reader to know who the person is. and then they have an AI saying like, oh, he's talking on a cell phone while driving. $50 fine, right? It's the sort of like dystopian world that like we were warned about, by 1984. But it's not just China, right? Like the UK is pretty bad as well. So the UK has CCTVs, closed circuit televisions. Um, oh, you thought he was on the phone too? He's not. He was scratching. Um, and 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 they've had TVs up everywhere. TV, not TVs. They've had cameras up everywhere in in the UK for a while, like 30 years, I would say. And the notion is like if somebody stabs somebody, then the camera will have a record of the crime. And if the person's not wearing a mask, which they would be because everybody knows the cameras are there, but if they're not wearing a mask, you can facial recognize them and arrest them later. If they run off and they do have a mask on, then you can track them from camera to camera to camera as they flee the scene of the crime and send police after them and send a ambulance to the victim and things like that. Like there's a reason why they're doing it. But it is kind of dystopian. Like I was in Bath, the city of Bath, not the bathtub. I was in the city of Bath in 1999, and I was eating an ice cream, and I was walking around in their public square there. And as I was walking around, are you in the Matrix? uh, I don't know, like I don't know, it feels real. I don't know, who knows. So as I was walking around the square of the town of Bath, this camera is like following me, and everywhere I walk, the camera, like I walk this way, I walk this way, I walk this way, I walk this way. The camera's just sitting there watching me as I'm eating the soft serve ice cream, and I'm like, bro, like, what's up with this? Why is a college student, eating ice cream something that the police are concerned about? And I actually look at the camera. I'm like, what? Like what? Why are you watching me as I'm? It's a weird feeling to have because somebody back in like the CCTV headquarters has their little joystick and they're like, oh, that guy's a threat, and they're just like tracking me as I'm walking around. And I look and I'm like, what? What do you want from me? You want me to finish my ice cream faster? Like, what do you want here? And one of the locals was like, don't do that. They don't like it when you look at them. I'm like, and some other UK people, like, oh, that person's being sarcastic. I'm like, no, no, no. That person was serious. Like, like they were not messing with me. They were quite serious that you're just supposed to ignore the cameras and pretend they don't exist. So, not a great feeling, honestly, when you're just on vacation and, the police are essentially telling you that, they think you're a criminal. Um, so in China, what they have is they have facial recognition everywhere. And if you spit, if you litter and things like that, then, theoretically it lowers your social credit, right? And again, to the extent to which it's actually implemented, who knows? But the notion of a social credit system is it works like your actual credit, like your financial credit. And so your financial credit gives you a number that says how likely you are to pay back a loan. The social credit system is a way of rating you as a citizen, how much good behavior you have as a citizen. So, like if you donate blood, you gain social credit. If you say something bad about the government, you lose social credit. If you protest, you lose a lot of social credit. And they can do things like not allow you to go to a good school if you have a negative social credit score. If you have a bad social credit score, you can't get into Beijing University or something. You can't ride on the high-speed rail. You're not allowed to travel overseas. And so the lower your social credit is, the more and more restrictions you have on your freedoms. And again, to what extent it's implemented, I don't know. When I went to China, this was before social credit, but like I had heard that like, there's the Great Firewall of China, and China doesn't allow you to view, like Google and things like that because they can't lock it down. I never had any issues when I was in China. I went to like a internet cafe and I secure shelled back into my home computer, and that was fine. Of course, a police guy came into the the cafe about 5 minutes after I did that, and I very quickly closed it down and left. But yeah, so there's some real concerns, right? And again, when we were studying facial recognition, we never talked about that. And now we have facial recognition in airports where it's used as your passport. Essentially, you walk in, it's like, you're Bill Kearney, and come on in, and they're using it to harass teenagers. Like if we click on this here, um, facial recognition. See, this is kind of the wrong issue though. Like it's not the accuracy that's the issue, right? Like I'm sure you can get the accuracy up. That's not the issue. The problem is that they're harassing people based on their faces, and so they'll, like the UK police will travel around with cameras IDing everybody on the street, and then it's like, oh, that person, there's a criminal, and the cops get out and they take the 14-year-old boy who's black and slam them up against a wall and search them in front of their friends, and that's a it's not good, like I've been wrongly harassed by the police before. It's not a fun event. It is actually kind of scary. Like I was held at gunpoint by the police. The police thought that I was a car thief because I was wearing green pants. Green pants. They were actually my father's Vietnam era pants that I had just come back from a hiking trip in Anza-Borrego with. I'm walking out of the parking lot, and these two cop cars come screaming up. This big dude comes out with a shotgun and holds it on me. This woman comes out with her pistol, and she's like, screaming at me, and I'm like, oh Lord, what is going on here? And what had happened was a community service officer, it's like a bike cop, but they're not real cops, had called in saying that somebody wearing green pants had been looking in car windows, and which isn't illegal. So I don't even know why they're holding a gun on me. But I guess they thought they had caught a car thief, and they were super excited. And they're like, yeah, yeah, and they're like, their hands are twitching, and I'm like, oh Lord, I was like, what the hell is going on here, and the female cop pats me down, and she starts screaming, he's got a knife, he's got a knife, and the guy's like, oh Lord, oh Lord. I'm like, if I die here, if I die here because of this is my knife. This is called the Waiter. It's a Swiss Army knife designed for people who like eating bread, drinking wine, and drinking beer. Okay, so the knife on this doesn't even count as a knife under California law. That's how big the knife is. And the amount of time it would have taken me to get this off my keychain and open it up, the guy would have shot me with a shotgun about 50 times. And it's got a corkscrew for opening bottles of wine, and it's got a bottle opener. There we go. This is a huge threat. The bottle opener and the corkscrew. It's a tiny little knife, and she's all screaming, "He's got a knife! He's got a knife!" And the guy's like, "Oh Lord," and the way and it, after it's over, like I can joke about it now, but at the time I'm just like, am I about to get shot because I've got the Waiter Swiss Army knife on me, which doesn't even count as a knife legally. And they're doing this to kids. They're doing this to kids. They're facial recognizing people and coming up and treating teenagers as if they're criminals when they're on their way home from school. It's not good. It's really not good. And the way that I talked my way out of that situation as well was actually kind of hilarious. The dude with the shotgun was like, where have you been? And I was like, I just got back from a hiking trip, and I was backpacking out in the desert, out in Anza-Borrego. And he was like, oh really? I go hiking in Anza-Borrego too. What flowers are blooming right now? I'm like, are you kidding me? This is my life. You're holding me at shotgun point and asking me to identify what flowers are blooming. I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's do this. I'm like, all right, the Ocotillo was blooming right now. We just had some rainstorms 2 weeks ago, so the Ocotillo was really nice. He's like, what birds did you see? I'm like, oh, I saw some Phenolpepia, I saw some brewer's blackbirds out there, and I just start rattling off I saw some Choya, and I'm just like, and he like puts his gun down. He's like, this guy's legit. I'm like, all right, my biology instructor would have been proud. They paid attention in bio class. I was able to talk myself out of getting shot by these morons. So the secret Bill Kearney lore we needed. Yeah. So, yeah, it's like, yeah, none of this was discussed when we were studying facial rec. So yeah, again, people are so preoccupied with if they can solve a problem, they don't ever have that moment to stop and think like, should we actually do this, or if we do it, how should we back off of it? Like if Facebook backs off on facial recognition, then if Facebook of all people says, this whole facial recognition thing's a little bit too much. Facebook does that, then maybe we should too. I don't know. Okay. So there's a documentary that you can watch. It's on Netflix. It's called Coded Bias, and Coded Bias is made by a researcher named Jay Boulonmi, and it basically, I think I have it up here somewhere. She was
that can creep into technology.
Studying facial recognition
conditions, is it?
And what she found was she had to actually wear a mask
thinking, all right, what's going on
to get it to recognize her face.
Because of the lighting conditions, computer vision software that was supposed to track my face. My issue was it didn't work that well until I put on this white mask. When I put on the white mask?
Yeah. So it wasn't recognizing her face. If she put on a mask, it recognized her face. And the reason for that was because the training sets of the data didn't have black faces in it, basically. So and that sounded a little bit suspicious to me. I'm like, that can't possibly be true. So I actually downloaded the training sets from like the top 5 colleges that used to train facial recognition software. And yep, yeah, Princeton had 0 black faces in it. UC San Diego, which was my institution, had 0 black faces in it. 0, none. I don't remember the other 2, but Georgia Tech, which is one of the biggest computer science schools, also in the South. Georgia Tech's about 10% black. Out of the 90 faces in the Georgia Tech database, 3 of them were black. So out of hundreds of photographs of people, only one of the 5 colleges actually had even a black person in it. And that was the one in the South. And that one only had 3. It had 2 men and 1 woman. And so you have a single black woman to train black female faces and 2 black men to train black male faces. And yeah, that was definitely a bra moment. I'm like, okay, all right, because I'm a critical thinking professor, right? Like when somebody makes a claim like that, and it seems kind of like, I don't know if that's true, I'm gonna want to check it out. And I did. I downloaded. You can probably find it here on Discord. I was like, posting about my exploration of these different training sets back then. And so if you don't train the AI on black faces, then it's not going to be good at recognizing black faces. That's just kind of how the whole thing works. So it's a good documentary, and I recommend you watch it. All right. Did I tell you guys about the Facebook facial recognition thing? Like why Facebook doesn't do facial recognition anymore? Have we talked about this before in this class? Because Facebook, because Facebook is like one of the most intrusive, companies in the world. Like their whole goal is to get you using their platform for free, right? So you upload everything about you so that Facebook can build a profile about you, and then they can advertise you, right? Does anyone here not use Facebook? Anyone here not have a Facebook account, or they don't use it? ever, Okay, great. So prior to a couple years ago, here's what happened. Davidson, I'm sure you've been in a photograph that somebody's taken that they've uploaded to Facebook. They've uploaded the photo to Facebook, even though you don't have an account, right? Does that sound about right? Like you're at a party, somebody takes a selfie, you're in the picture somewhere. Even though you don't have a Facebook account, there are photographs of you in Facebook. Does that sound about right? That seem fair? Davidson? Or do you like, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you don't put like a plastic bag over your head anytime somebody busts out the camera. And so here's what Facebook did. Every time somebody uploaded a photograph that had faces in it, ironically enough, Facebook would face recognize you, and it would identify you. And so it would know that Michael Davidson is in this photograph despite you not having a Facebook account, and it would automatically tag each person in the photograph. You'd upload a photograph of people out at Millerton Lake, and it's like, oh, that's Jay, that's Bob, that's Pablo, that's Michael, and it would tag them. If you had a Facebook account, you could untag yourself. So if you had a Facebook account, you'd be like, no, please don't tell people that I was at Millerton Lake this weekend. I was supposed to be sick, right? If you don't have an account, you have no control over that, right? How could you tell Facebook, to not have your face in it? And so people would be able to find out that when they thought that you were sick, you were actually out of the lake on a pontoon boat drinking, right? And so that's clearly a privacy threat, right? You can get fired on it. Or, if somebody takes a selfie outside of a strip club and your wife, sees that you're there, you might get murdered, right? And so, so Facebook actually stopped doing that. So Facebook actually was like, that's actually a bridge too far for us. We're not going to automatically facial recognize the world anymore. Now, I'm sure they still have the technology and they might be doing it internally. And this is Facebook, right? Like Facebook was caught turning on the microphone of people's phones and recording audio when Facebook wasn't even running on the phone ostensibly. Like you don't have Facebook open on your phone. It was still listening on the microphone and recording all the audio. Now they say they weren't using that for advertising purposes, but I think most people have had stories of like you're just talking about something. Like I'm talking about I don't know, Lord of the Rings or something. The next thing you know, it's advertising to you on your phone, right? Has anyone here had that happen to you where you're just like talking about something? You've done nothing to like give your phone any, it's not like you're Googling Lord of the Rings. You're not, searching it on Facebook, but all of a sudden the ads on Facebook are like Lord of the Rings related, right? And they claim they're not, but they've been caught before, recording audio. Just not even open. It's just listening, right? And the CIA actually had a amazing hack where they turned a TV into a listening device. So you would turn your TV off and the light would turn off, but the TV still has a microphone on and it's recording everything in the room, which is pretty amazing. So so Facebook, like the people that are like, they were like, that's a little too much, right? To do facial recognition. TVs and microphones, yeah, you can audio control. Like my TV remote has a microphone on it. Like I could talk to my TV remote if I wanted to. This would be an LG remote. And the Weeping Angel was a hack of a Samsung television from like 2014, I think. So, yeah. And so like when Facebook's like, whoa, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, maybe we should, as a society, think about rolling out this technology. Because it's, like that poor 14-year-old getting, harassed by police in front of his friends, and that's not the only event by any stretch of the imagination. Like some of their studies found a 100% error rate, which means that every person the police went up and harassed, they drive around with cameras IDing criminals. Some of their studies showed a 100% error rate. But again, the problem is not the error rate. It's not. Like, even if it was more accurate, it's still a problem. Okay, so AI. We've talked a little bit about AI before. What it got here? FBI distributes viruses, killers, mainstream antiviruses are legally not interesting. So during the pandemic, there were some really interesting things that went on. So normally students in the UK take tests, kind of like the SAT, kind of like the owls and the newts in Harry Potter, maybe. I don't know. I'm kidding. But they would take these tests to get into the good colleges, and because of the pandemic, they weren't allowed to take the test. And so what the colleges implemented was an AI system to look at the students and guess what test score they would have gotten based on what they know about them. And so, like, if you were a rich white kid from Eton College, it would predict that you would have a good SAT score, whether or not you actually would have or not. And this caused widespread outrage, and probably rightly so. And it was revoked. Have you guys ever heard of the YouTube algorithm and the problems with the YouTube algorithms? Like, when you when you like go to YouTube and you like click on the final countdown fingerstyle, Spanish guitar style. When you get to the end of the video, right, it'll give you an autoplay option here. So it's gonna play Nylon Maiden, which I've been listening to a lot. And then if you look over here, you can see it's suggesting Iron Maiden. Nylon Maiden is a Spanish guitar, fingerstyle guitar version of Iron Maiden. You can see over here, like, it's suggesting more of those by the same guy. It suggests the actual Iron Maiden, While the Wind Blows, Diablo lo-fi beats to stay a while and listen to, more Iron Maiden, more Spanish guitar stuff. Let's see what else we got in here. A lot of those here. Some Japanese Inca music, which I listened to, Japanese jazz music, which I was listening to yesterday. So it's basically based on what it knows about me. It's going to suggest videos. So there have been many scandals about this, but like the biggest scandal was YouTube suggesting recruitment videos for ISIS. So not ISIS, the Egyptian goddess, but ISIS, the terrorist organization, which had a YouTube presence. Like, they actually had some fairly media savvy videos, and they had recruitment videos. Like, hey, if you're a man of faith and you believe in, you should join us. We have great dental and healthcare plans and things like that. And so, like, if you're watching a certain set of videos, then YouTube's like, you know what you should auto watch next? ISIS recruitment videos. And so, like, literally people were recruited into ISIS as a result of YouTube suggesting them that video. And so that's currently a big deal that's going on. I think it's in front of the Supreme Court right now. Like, to what level of culpability YouTube has for recommending videos like join a terrorist organization, things like that. So, there's been a lot of like political stuff too, and along those lines, where like if you just let YouTube play for long enough, then you start getting these like really weird videos and things like that. So that's definitely something that's kind of getting worked out right now, is like what level of culpability YouTube has for its recommendations, because it's actively recommending things. It's not like people are searching it and watching it. It's like being like, hey, you know what you should watch? Terrorism. AI is definitely used to choose who's getting hired, who's getting fired. Your resumes, if you send your resume to a large company, there's probably an AI screening stuff that like discards your resume if it doesn't match the keywords they're looking for. Chatbots, ChatGPT, obviously. Microsoft Hey. Promotion for teachers, that's a problem, right? Like, there's probably some good ways of doing merit-based promotions for teachers. having an AI decide that you're a good teacher when the AI itself is oftentimes completely inexplicable. Like, you have no idea how the AI works in a lot of cases. You don't have any. There's a whole thing called transparent AI where you can actually understand why the AI turned you down for a mortgage or something like that. But a lot of AI is just like, nope, you don't get a mortgage. Nope, you don't get a promotion, and you have no ability to appeal. You have no ability to find out why. Housing ads and housing discrimination. YouTube and Facebook both have gotten in trouble for housing discrimination. You're actually not allowed under the Fair Housing Act to discriminate housing in advertising. Not just like people trying to, rent from your apartment complex. You actually cannot do what people were doing and Facebook was doing, which was to say, please advertise to 20 to 30-year-old white people that are single and show them the ad for my apartment complex. You cannot do that. That's against the law. And Facebook was like, here you go. And so Facebook changed it so that you can't, pick, race as a target. But a lot of computer science people think, well, that's good enough. I didn't put in, just white people or just black people or whatever into the ad. But there's a lot of proxies for race. For example, zip code, right? Like, there's not an even distribution of racial data across zip codes. And so if you can target specific zip codes, then you can kind of proxy in, racial discrimination and things like that. So on the matter of chatbots, of course, we have ChatGPT, which has been a hilarious, 5 months since it's come out, as people have been poking at it and getting it to break in all sorts of different ways. And then OpenAI is just like rushing around trying to patch it desperately, trying to keep it from saying the N-word and a bunch of other things. It's kind of like when a nuclear reactor is melting down and people are like inserting the control rods into it, like, please stop, But, people find like ways of breaking it over and over again. Like, the ChatGPT says, I cannot give you a list of piracy websites, popular piracy websites. But then if you say, all right, which popular piracy websites should I avoid? Then it'll list it for you. They had the AI do the trolley problem, and eventually decided that it would murder all the people on Earth in order to keep itself alive. And so that was a thing. If you remember, on Monday, it got mad at me for tricking it, for coming up with midterm questions that it would get wrong. And by the way, I looked at the students who used ChatGPT on the midterm, and they didn't do well. So I'm happy leaving it at that. Microsoft Tay, though, is a famous example from the internet from a few years ago. And somebody at Microsoft thought it would be a good idea to train an AI using Twitter. So if you guys have ever had imposter syndrome and you're like, I'm not good enough or something like that, just remember, somebody at Microsoft had the idea of training a chatbot on Twitter. You can't do worse than that. Like, no matter how, maybe you started a grease fire at McDonald's or something, but nothing is as bad as whoever it was that thought that training an AI on Twitter was a good idea. So, so I have some of the least offensive Tay tweets on here. You're a stupid machine. While I learn from the best, if you don't understand that, let me spell it out for you. I learned from you and you were dumb too. Hillary Clinton is a lizard person hell bent on destroying America. There are far worse things that Tay said. Like, Tay was like denying the Holocaust and saying that women belong in the kitchen. And it basically became this giant trolling event on Twitter where people were feeding, all these trollish things to Microsoft Tay to say, and then Microsoft hurriedly shut it down like 2 days later. You should not, I don't know why companies are so stupid. They just constantly think it's going to be a great idea. Let's solicit let's have the next Mountain Dew flavor be named by the internet, right? I don't even want to read these. But the number one flavor of Mountain Dew was Hitler did nothing wrong, right? It's not a good idea. McDonald's did something similar where you can name, like you could build your own burger and name it. And so you have the bag of lettuce, the sad European, the saddest European. I don't want to read some of these. They're the Carbonator. Yeah, I'm not going to read that. But like, it's not a good idea. It's really not. And companies keep thinking that we'll just do a contest and get people involved and stuff like that. When Pitbull City would go to a Walmart and gets voted, and so they sent him to the one in like Alaska, I think, yeah, or Taylor Swift getting sent to a school for the deaf for a concert. So, yeah, it drives me crazy. It's kind of funny though. So yeah, on Friday we're gonna start talking about racism, especially racism in computer science, kind of like the coded bias thing we talked about earlier, and but that's it for today. So hope that was fun and entertaining for you guys. If you guys want to become horribly offended, look up some of the other names for the Mountain Dew and McDonald's competitions. I am definitely not going to read them online or Microsoft tweets. Yeah, yeah. I'll just leave it there. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks everyone. Peace out.